Well, hello guys, and glad to have you on board again today. This one is one that I wanted to do for quite some time. It's one particular topic that has been covered quite a lot in the past if you've been familiar with some of the content that I release, but still I didn't really quite find the time to fully dig deeper into this and explain everything that I have to say about that. So this is exactly what I'm going to be doing today. The title says it all. We're going to be talking about the value crisis, which is yet something that I've been mentioning quite a lot throughout the latest, I would say, couple of years. So I definitely thought anyway, COVID would be kind of a big catalyst, potentially some other crisis to occur in that sense. And of course, today we're going to be talking about multiple things. Try to remain as unbiased as I could possibly be. I think regarding that specific matter, I think I am kind of unbiased. Of course, being perfectly in the center is no one's guess. So I'm definitely can't be perfectly neutral, but I think I am as neutral as I could be. So with that neutral angle, I'll try to open up your minds on what potential cases could happen and what specific radical parties would actually kind of stand upon this potential revolution of the value crisis. So there are multiple camps. One that you are probably already very familiar with is the World Economic Forum Great Reset Theory. You will own nothing and be happy, which first of all, I would sincerely invite you to have a look at the meme itself because it's full of shit. This sentence itself doesn't come from the World Economic Forum themselves, and not at all actually. And if we were smart enough to dig deeper into the World Economic Forum vision, you would actually see that this is far from being just as dystopic and dystopian as some influencers would like you to think of. So there's, of course, that means that if there's one radical vision, and don't get me wrong, the World Economic Forum's vision still is very, very concerning on some specific points. That also means it has been overstated most of the cases, which means there is probably an opposite party which is using the same old manipulation techniques as the other way, just to kind of rally you to their cause. So I would hardly name them because it's still kind of a frontier that is hard to draw. But I would say if I had to sum up the core essentials on the kinds of people who might be radically opposited to the World Economic Forum and therefore using the same manipulative techniques to distort the truth, which would just be, well, I would say Bitcoin maximalists, and kind of the same old cypherpunks assessing and asserting for the collapse of the current financial system and basically just scrambling everything around, putting it down to dust so that we can rebuild, or for the worst and most radical of them, just to say we need absolutely no governance at all. We could just live ourselves happily ever after with just Bitcoin. Well, of course, this is full of shit. I hope you know that. This is just no more than the same radical bullshit that the World Economic Forum says, which is, well, the world is too tiny for us to live in there, though there's going to be crisis of different sorts, a financial crisis, environmental crisis, these kind of ESG. We need to reform society, we need to reform environment, we need to reform governance, and let us do it. We know how to do it. We're the best ones and most suited ones for the job. So just trust us. And in the process, you're going to lose every bit of privacy and every bit of control. We're going to take care of everything. And basically, as the meme says, well, we're just gonna remove every possessions of yours and you'll be happy. Well, of course, like we stated, this is dystopian as fuck. So, of course, some of the World Economic Forum's vision is out of any rational standard of potential future. But on the other hand, the kind of libertarian vision of Bitcoin will control everything. You're going to retain and regain control of what's been taken away from you by just owning Bitcoin is pretty damn freaking dangerous as well. So we're going to try stating today both of those camps. What are their narratives? What is the likeliest in-between stuff that's going to come out of this? Is it truly a revolution? And the answer to me is a big yes. Is this revolution already started? The answer to this would be yes as well. Though we're going to same old use the kind of the model that I've been using in the past. Still haven't found the time to translate that one in English, so I will translate it right away. You just got the overall picture for this. This is just, once again, nothing more than a model. It's just helping me showing you these things. So what needs to be assessed out of this is I've been applying this model for financial markets revolution. This is a revolution that has already started. I think this revolution has been initialized by cryptocurrencies and distributed ledger technologies in general. So this is a revolution that has started years ago. It's going on now, and we've gone through most of the steps. These steps in here is that anyhow and anyway, any revolution has to start by these things, which is nothing more than just 2 steps to radicalize 2 parties who are going to violently fight against each other until in the end, the step 3 of the revolution is that both camps actually state that it was obvious. Both of us were wrong. The true is actually in between, but there has been a significant societal shift in between. So the question you should ask yourselves is, what the heck is this actual revolution shift going to be all about? So in terms of financial systems, I've always said these centralized parties with endlessly printing money to solve kind of problems, so like privatizing the gains and socializing the losses, is basically a system that just can't go further down the line. We're going to have some more in-between thing, mixed feelings, in which I stated I am definitely pro-crypto, knowing that I will probably be biased and I will probably be subject to feel these 3 steps of natural imbalances in terms of psychological mindset. So I was like a partisan in that game, saying I have been part of the financial system and I do understand how it works. I am probably more of a crypto enthusiast than I am a financial system enthusiast. But the thing is that I also understand both camps. I do understand how the financial system is going to fight to maintain its status quo, just like I understand how crypto believers will probably end up in hitting a very hard wall, being totally disappointed, though the world will end up with is kind of an hybrid world between these two. Though we're not going to live in a crypto world, we're not going to live in a financial state world in which everything is private and we socialize the losses. It's not going to happen anymore. We're going to end up with a kind of hybrid system in which both of those radical visions will tend to find some middle grounds. So that's the model that I've been using for cryptocurrencies. And like I said, what matters is to understand that there's a kind of a mental shift, a psychological shift in between these things. That is kind of 3 steps, A, B, and C, okay? In which obviously the disrupted kind of old world is going to feel like they're losing control, when of course on the opposite end and slightly afterwards, the loss of control of the kind of old game, which is going to fight for survival, which is basically the opponents will feel like, oh, they totally lost control. So we got it, folks. We've succeeded. We finally have putting them down to the knees. The world is ours, and definitely going to be feeling euphoric, denial of risks, and basically excess of confidence of all sorts. On the opposite hand, of course, this is the kind of opposite reactions: fight, flight, or denial, feeling angry and violence against the fact that they've been losing control. That's the way. Of course comes step 2, which is more after this initial set of disparities in terms of psychological mismanagements, come kind of back to neutral, which means those who lost control will resign and capitulate. They will understand that there's nothing they can do. The things are already starting to change and going to have to either abide by and adapt or actually just die. Some will keep on fighting endlessly and die. Others will then adapt. On the other hand, those who felt like they'd taken control, again, just feel nervosity and doubt because, well, feels not quite like we wanted. They were supposed to be dead and we were supposed to take over control, but turns out for whatever reason, things are not under our control either. We are actually losing control, and they will feel like the delusions phase, which is exactly what we've experienced for 2 radical crypto partisans. Me actually included. I actually ended up feeling that delusion, just like basically we thought we had changed the game, but they've adapted so well that we're going to go back to the old game, which is not the case, okay? We're not going to go back to business as usual. Cryptocurrencies is here to stay, at least for the good ones. But right now you could definitely be, or at least during the latest few months, you could have been in that delusion phase. They broke it all out. They managed to to kill us with those 3 ACs and the like. Okay, so this is the same old model that we're going to use as a support today for the same old arguments. Figuring it out in a different framework, how this same pattern is likely going to play out. But like we stated, we need to start with something that is going to be stupid and dangerous on one end, which is exactly what I would say is the World Economic Forum kind of vision of the world. These guys are stupid. We live in a finite world, and basically there's not enough resources for everyone. Everybody with just a 100 IQ would be smart enough to understand that the world we live in now is just not sustainable. So they're definitely stupid to think that we can just keep on going without killing us all. So this is exactly what the World Economic Forum elites are actually thinking about the rest of the crowd. They're definitely dumb. We can't go down this path. It's too dangerous, and we're just going to end up killing us all. There's a finite amount of resource on the planet Earth, and we're certainly not close enough to eventually think about going on an interplanetary species endeavor in which we're going to magically end up a kind of mining asteroids and stuff like that. This is so far away in the future. I'm going to kill us all before we actually going to be able to do it. So it's getting to the dangerous points in which we're going to have to act preemptively. It's getting, they're stupid, and the world is now dangerous enough, so we need to act. Okay? So the World Economic Forum's vision is basically there's going to be a series of crises which are going to inevitably emerge because the world isn't stable, and we're getting to the dangerous phase in which we're changing so much in the biosphere that, well, we don't necessarily know what's going to be the cause of these problems, but we're not going to try solving them. We're just going to let them expand. COVID was probably one of them. The financial crisis that we're in now probably is as well. And just going to try exacerbating these problems to force their way in to changing the world. Okay? The thing is that I would like to say, well, probably... sorry, I kind of got it wrong. The World Economic Forum is in here, okay? Though the world has gone too far, there's no way this can be sustainable. The future is ours, okay? So basically, anyway, you will see that these things are kind of the same. Though this has gone too far, there's no way this can be sustainable enough. Future is ours, okay? That's the thing. We have a plan, we have a motive, the Great Reset stuff. We know what has to be done. ESG, we need to reform environmental economics, we need to reform the social behaviors, and we need to reform the governance as well. Though we've figured it out, we're the smartest people on earth, which they are, by the way. We've regrouped, we've thought it through with all of those think tanks and whatever. We've just put it as much hard work as we could possibly do to try figuring out the problem. We've got the solution, trust us. Of course, you're going to have to lose control. We're going to have to take over control. And that's exactly what I think they are now. They're on the verge of thinking that they've taken control of the actual narratives and stuff like that. Well, of course, they're going to feel nervosity and doubt, and they're going to end up with delusion, figuring out that, well, their solution was way too stupid to be put it into motion. On the opposite end, like I said, we've got the I would call them old world participants. This is basically you and I. We've been living in a state for decades now, and if you're like me, like if you are somewhere in between 25 and 45 years old, you basically live your whole life through peace. I mean, if you're in a Western country at least. And in that perspective, you've just been fed up with money to consume. You've been a consumer all your life long, and then basically this is all you know. You've been having possessions, and it feels normal to you to just earn some money to get some possessions, and you basically define yourself without possessions. This is all you've been living through, okay? So, of course, what you will feel is like, boy, these guys who want this reset, they're really stupid, which we said they are not. They're definitely the smartest people on earth, regrouping. But the thing is that they still, no matter how smart their decisions may look like, they will still not figure out. The solution is probably some hybridization in between both of those camps. So they're stupid and they're freakingly dangerous. They're creating an exacerbating crisis to put their narratives into perspective, and we definitely have lost control. Whatever we felt we were possessing is taken out of us. There's probably going to be one other crisis in which we're going to lose control. First of all, we've lost control of for freedom of movement with COVID. They basically locked us home. There are probably some other crises down the line, environmental crisis or whatever, and we're just going to feel like we're losing control. We're losing it all, and these guys are taking control. They're actually taking control of the narratives. We feel like they have control over the entire set of money available in the world, so they are the decision makers. There's nothing we can do. We're absolutely losing control, and there's nothing we can do to fight against it. It's creating angry, violence kind of reactions, and we're going to see these emerging over and over again, fighting against the elites. Elites, which definitely think they've taken control. There's no way you can take them down. They have both money, power, and governance, and they will do and put their agendas at work. And this is already what's starting to happen. So for now, they're taking control. We are losing control. Okay? Depends on which side of the equation you are in. I personally sit kind of, like I said, not perfectly in between, because I'm more kind of in the side of those we mentioned to be, just giving an example, the kind of maximalists of, I would stand slightly in here, which is, well, I don't really think the World Economic Forum's vision is realistic enough. Not at all. Even though they might have part of the initial, of the final answer on that equation, I certainly more align with the fact that they can't just take away the way I was used to live back then. They could just taken me away of my possessions and stuff like that. I'm more like, if you try to take things from me, I will fight via denial. But like I said, I also have part of me who says, yeah, I still agree with some of what they said. There definitely is an unsustainable model where here it has to be changed, and I will feel disappointed if they just take over control. Okay, but the state we're in now is that this is going that way. They're going to take over control. We're going to lose control as time passes. So this value crisis that I'm mentioning, this is where we are now. I think we're past those two steps, which are the preliminary steps in which basically two camps are going to radicalize in themselves more and more. We're going to regroup and create those kinds of clans. Those two clans today are very, very easy to assess. We've got kind of the radicals who says, well, yeah, sure, something is going to change, but these guys are trying to take over control. We're just going to destroy everything, and the society will rebuild itself either organically, so they're going to cypherpunk vision of stuff, so we're going to break everything, and in that perspective, we're just going to rebuild order out of chaos, which I sincerely disagree with. It's certainly not in chaos that things will do well. But on the opposite hand, though, like we stated, we've got those guys who will just fight against the removal of their possessions. We say, well, I've been used all my life to own my stuff. You just can't tell me I do not anymore. You just can't take that power away from me. I would think, like I said, these things are going to be stupid as well. Don't do it, okay? Don't fight against. Just understand that the best possible way to live through a revolution is to, first of all, identify the need for that revolution, understanding what the potential motives could be, and try to figure out the end game so that you could save yourself some time and in the process avoid getting in through those extreme emotions. Don't feel like you're losing control or taking control. Just understand that these guys will feel those emotions, and if you're smart enough to understand that, you can actually make some profits in the meantime. Understand that revolutions are kind of inevitable, but the thing is that if you play it by an emotional state, you're going to pass through very radical emotions. Take of it as if you've been a crypto enthusiast, which you probably are if you're listening to me. Well, the thing is that you definitely felt like you were taking control a couple of years ago, right? Well, then you felt nervosity and doubt, and now you've been through the dissolution phase, which means next is it was obvious. The financial markets and financial systems will probably integrate crypto, and we will end up with a kind of a hybrid system. Right now, we're still in the adaptation to delusion phase, which means you still feel a bit disappointed, but things will recover. Things will do well, and you will see in the end that your initial vision wasn't the right one. The vision of your opponents, crypto has to die and whatever, wasn't the right one either, all right? The kind of in-between will be the right one, which means the radical crypto enthusiast will be just disappointed, and just as well for the old games in the financial system, which was basically nothing has to change, we've got the perfect system. It obviously wasn't true. All right? So try to put yourself in that framework, in that context, and try to think through these kind of world order changements of possessions. Though the kind of rhetorics and timelines and schematics around that would be about owning those things. So that's the reason why I've gone into you'll all know thing and be happy as a reference in here. Though the way we possess is going to have to change. All right, it's obvious if you think of it that way. The problem is that if you're too untied from one end of the stick, you're going to figure out the same problem. So let's just try figuring out what kinds of problems would be around the possession revolution. So the first thing is to understand that the end game is going to be change, which means you're certainly not going to lose everything, all right? Just don't be dumb enough to go radical. Though just like you're certainly not going to own everything, just like you've been used to so far, all right? So try to think shaded gray areas. Where could we find the middle grounds to try avoiding getting and being manipulated by these guys? Though, I would say what's good and bad to take on both ends. Though, on the World Economic Forum side is the thing that, yes, certainly we might have to rethink possessions. Some of the things that are around us on a day-to-day basis might not necessarily be required to be owned and then consumed and destroyed, because that creates a tremendous amount of waste. It's a big problem to create circular economies by recycling and so on. So, in that sense, I kind of would say I agree with them. Though the thing is that if I had to put myself into a perspective, I would just look around myself, all right? Look at my house and just say, okay, among those things, what are the things that are pretty damn resource intensive, consuming a lot of resource? Because the crisping angle of this is the resource limitation. So on a resource limitation kind of angle of vision, what is around me that I am currently owning, which I think could change? In a sense that, well, if I wasn't going to own that thing a couple of years from now, or let's say 5 to 10 years from now, the timeline isn't really predictable. If years from now, I wasn't necessarily owning that thing, but out of World Economic Forum's projections, kind of renting my way into this thing. Like instead of having it and paid entirely for it and owning it until it just doesn't work anymore and I'd have to buy another one, replacing it by a rental system, which is basically I do not own this thing anymore. I'm accessing, okay, the service, because that's actually the end game. That's where I think they are right and most people are wrong, is that we summarize this to just a dystopian vision in which we're just going to remove every of your possessions. I don't think that's actual true thing. The actual narrative is going to the dystopia, to the disparity between ownership and service, which means some of the things that you have use of as a possession today isn't just necessarily something that you have to own. It's just giving you a service. And transforming ownership to a service design kind of economy, on some cases, I think kind of makes sense. So just look around you and try to figure out what is resource intensive, what is actually costing quite a lot, has a definite lifespan, which means once you've consumed it, it's definitely going to expire and you're going to have to replace it, and what is very, very less likely to be recycled, which means you're probably just going to drop it and, well, it's going to end up somewhere and just people are just going to try endlessly building new things to replace the previous ones without recycling the previous one. All right? Well, it turns out there are a few things that immediately come out to me. It's the actual, like, my fridge, my oven, my washing machine, my dishwasher. All of these things are pretty damn resource intensive. The thing is that they expire because they just can't work forever. The recycling units for this is close to nowhere, and it's very dangerous, though I think this is one of the things that can change. Second step is that actually turns out to be more and more relevant to me. When I just came to some friends of mine, and they're not the only ones actually, it's starting to show up. Well, they're obviously not the richest ones of my friends. They're pretty tight on money. But the thing is that, well, they actually ended up switching and stopping buying their fridge and stuff like that, and ended up starting to rent. To say, well, I can get a pretty nice fridge and a pretty nice kind of washing machine and the like, by using kind of subscription services. Instead of owning that thing, I'm renting it so that if I have, I don't know, whatever dysfunctions or whatever, I just get to change, all right? They get to get back the thing that doesn't work. They're going to get me back something that works in just a couple of days, and they will figure out all of the recycling and the like. Well, in that subscription kind of services, yes, we can put out a recycling facility financed by the renting cost and stuff like that. So this kind of economical system actually works. The thing is, the only thing that doesn't work is our relationship with it. is the fact that, well, if you've been used all life long, like I am, to own this thing, when someone's going to say, no, you can't own these things anymore, it's just too too costly for the planet, you're just going to have to go buy these subscription services, all right? So like I said, this can be forced to you. That's the economic vision, the economic forum version of things. Like, well, you're too stupid to do it yourself, so we're going to force you in. And there are multiple ways we can do it. We can just manipulate prices, which means we take the prices of goods and we just make it so volatile that you're going to start gambling your way into the washing machine, meaning that the price of the washing machine is so disrupted up and down and up by the costs of by the fabrication costs and the like, that you could actually turn out to be a washing machine trader, buying it cheap because it just dropped down 20% this time around, and you know that it's going to be double the price a year from now. So you could just buy a warehouse, put it full of these things, and just start to be an actual service provider. And as you can see, this is probably the way it's going to happen naturally, by just shifting prices one way or the other very violently and volatilely. You're just going to end up figuring out that probably the washing machine price is too much of a variable. What matters in the end is the service it provides. What you want in the end is not getting the best and the most beautiful washing machine. You just want to get your clothes neat and clean. And in that sense, well, I think that's the way the revolution is going to occur. It's just naturally it has to happen. Some of the things that we have around us don't necessarily have to be owned. Some still have, and that's the way I think the World Economic Forum has it wrong in thinking that this revolution is going to be everywhere and everything we own is going to be rented in the future so that they can get control of the supply chains and the like. But the thing is that it's probably still going to happen on some things that have to change. It's going to happen step by step, I guess. But that's the thing, all right? Now that you've understood that and that you've figured out kind of the narratives that's going to be used to manipulate you in this process, okay? It's the way it is. You're probably going to have to give up some of your possessions, and you don't have to feel like you're losing control. It's probably not going to work out for everything around you. I personally think that some of our possessions will forever be like that. Like, I think some of the things that are called commodities will never end up being removed possessions. Like, to be honest, I think try to get me myself on a way and to rent it for me, are never going to happen. I want to own that thing because I don't want anyone to dictate my consumptions or whatever on that thing. So I think there are some of those things that the World Economic Forum thinks were going to be subscription services inevitably, basically cell phones and stuff like that. I entirely disagree with that. The populations will never agree with that. And yeah, they could still try it out. There's been rumors that Apple is going to go for this subscription services type of stuff, but I think it's going to be absolute failure. No one wants that. We all want to own our phones, and if Apple just dares going to the subscription stuff, I think it's going to be a tremendous failure. Though we'll see all about that. But like I said, be ready for some things to change. If you are just thinking that you're going to lose control, and is this just the beginning of a very dangerous and slippery slope of you're going to lose control of everything and stuff like that, you're going to have a motive response. You're going to fight, flight, or denial, and please, guys, don't do it, all right? The bad guys are not necessarily the World Economic Forum. Sure as shit, there are some absolute dystopian leaders out there who just would like to just profit from every crisis around to just take over more control. There surely will be a lot of them, and they will have an excessive confidence, euphoric and risk denial on the fact that they can use and profit from each and every of the crises that they might actually even help to create or exacerbate, but they will inevitably be wrong. They will end up in the delusion phase. You will inevitably have to adapt. So try to be smarter than that. Don't fight against it. All right? Just go ahead and understand that it's going to happen. Just try to have the smoothest as possible kind of emotional response, but by most importantly not being biased by the radicals, okay? And they will try it as hard as they can, and they can be very, very convincing. All right? Though, try to be as smart as it is. Try to understand that these things are already changing. There's very little you can do to this, okay? The end game is very likely going to be a hybridized version of both radical visions that we are living in today. So the top things you should do and figure out in this process is to understand there's nothing you can do about it. Revolutions will just probably go by. all you can do is try not to be too much of a bias. Understand the radical visions and try to understand that actually there is good and bad on both of them. So don't let yourself being under the narratives of the crypto maximalists and Bitcoin maximalists to say, well, we're just going to destroy every government. This World Economic Forum stupid shit just kind of have to be killed. They're dangerous people. Or at least they will fail and Bitcoin will take over. Just don't get me wrong, a world surrounding around Bitcoin is very dangerous, to say the least. It's very, very dangerous. So on the opposite end, both are pretty damn radical people. Just don't figure it out that way, okay? You just don't have to possess everything. Just be honest about that. You certainly don't necessarily have to possess all your money as well, but it doesn't mean you can be just swimming naked with life insurance on monetary funds and stuff like that, okay? You just don't do that. Of course, having Bitcoin is absolutely necessary. Some of what these guys defend is true. Is definitely true. Bitcoin as an insurance is not a dystopian vision of the future. It's a reality. You better have to have some, all right? Not too much of it. Having 10 Bitcoins makes no sense for a normal human being. You would have far more money power in this potential dystopian Bitcoin future than absolutely necessary. So just try to understand that just a bit of Bitcoin as an insurance is a way to go safe through that revolution on the financial side. Accepting to let go with some of your possessions is going to be necessary as well. Don't be stupid enough to think that you're going to lose control all over the place. But on the opposite end, you certainly don't have to follow the narratives of these guys and thinking that they really are taking over control. They probably won't, and they will fail in their endeavor. All right. The thing is that it's happened as a cycle. It's going to be long. The time scale can vary, of course. It depends mostly on external factor catalysts. All right. So the least you could understand is on a more practical side in terms of risk management and stuff like that. The way I've been using this model is a kind of a general framework to avoid having myself in extreme emotions, because these biases will temper the way you trade as well. So as a trader, I want to be as neutral as possible because, of course, knowing no one can be perfectly neutral, though I would like to be to be aware of the potential disruptions that I could be victim of, though just I don't fall for it. Or if I do fail for it, I'm not going to fall too long into it and try to remain as neutral as possible over time. Okay, the second thing is try to understand what could be the mechanisms catalyzing and fueling that revolution to happen. Like I said, I think prices is the thing that's going to shake our values the most efficiently. So I think the prices volatility is the number one thing to come. And when we stated that the heart of the problem is the actual a fundamental amount of resources available on Earth, I think these resources is where prices will go crazy. That's also the reason why I've said it. I think commodity prices will go through the roof and basic materials as well. So that's really the way it is. That's the way I think these revolutions will be fueled and catalyzed by volatility on those specific sectors. So if you do trade them, which I do, be aware that volatility can go really, really hard. That means prices can surge and then fall very quickly. That also means that if you bet on the upside and prices do go crazy, know that there will be bubbles. They will go from bullish to bearish in a moment. So the thing is, if you wait thinking that there's going to be pullback to final excesses and stuff like that, it's obviously not going to be the case. All right. So what I've always said is that there's probably going to be bubbles building around these kind of things that we want to fight for, those possessions of ours, okay? But on the opposite end, the scarcity of some basic materials, requirements, and commodity stuff will be at the heart of the problem because it will shake our foundation of what we call the values. There is a definitely blurred line between values and possessions. Understand that what's going to change are the possession sides, but it's likely going to shift our value perceptions as well, which is why I've always called it the value crisis. Your own inner self values will be shifted and dramatically be moved around. People on both extreme sides will try to manipulate that to get you to rally their cause. Don't be dumb enough to do it. Understand that your values will shift. Be ready for it. Just don't fall for any of the radical narratives. Try to navigate these actually and understand that at some point, some of them will feel like they're taking control, but then they will lose it. And on the opposite hand, some will feel like they've lost control, but they will still, in the end, kind of have a feeling like it goes back to normal. Kind of the same old stuff, okay? You have to adapt. If you do not, and if you try to endlessly fight against, you're only just going to be the dumb one always being proven wrong, all right? So you just can't be a Bitcoin maximalist thinking that anything will go to chaos and that we're going to have to find our way into some dystopian future all around Bitcoin, and if you don't buy Bitcoin, they're going to remove all of your possessions. This is full of shit. This is really, really full of shit. Just like on the opposite directions, giving total control to a limited set of individuals, no matter how smart they are, history has told us it's always going to fail. So this is going to fail this time around as well. So don't let yourself be manipulated by the World Economic Forum's kind of elite stuff in which, well, we're going to figure our way out of it. Just let us figure out the ESG. Just let us get control over your possessions. Just gently let go. We're going to make it a nice place for you to live in. It's definitely stupid as well, and you know it. So try to find the middle grounds in between the two. Have some securities, some things that you own, all right? I think cryptocurrency is one way to do it. Understand that have all your possessions in cryptocurrency is full of shit. This is radical vision of stuff, all right? Cryptocurrency must be used as an insurance against the control that these guys at the World Economic Forums and the like are actually taking over, all right? We're in a phase in which they are taking control. They think they will have it forever, and they won't. You feel and might feel like you're losing control. Just don't really understand that this isn't going to be permanent. You have to adapt. It's going to be challenging because the changing orders in human beings is very disturbing. This is another topic that we could cover endlessly, but this is called homeostasis, which means the status quo in which you lived in, and particularly for decades, can be very disruptive when it changes, and it can naturally create those negative emotions. Like your brain just wants to go back to this homeostasis, and it's just do everything it can to find the easiest solution, the most eloquent mental solution for you to think that things won't change. The reality is that you're gonna have to accept that it has to change, and that if you're stupidly letting yourself being manipulated by those who will take advantage of those weaknesses, well, it's just gonna be a puppet, all right? So the puppets are going to be the ones that will have extreme emotions and stuff like that. Just try to be smart enough to understand that it's probably going to happen anyway, whether you fight against it or not, whether you think you want to be part of the taking control teams or whatever. Just understand that both will be wrong. And if you're smart enough to navigate that the best possible way, well, you can actually even end up in a better position than those who will try to either fight against or fight for. All right? So that's really the way I see it. I wanted to cover it extensively in that video today. I hope you've learned something out of it. Remember that the core of the problem is probably going to be prices, because that's the most efficient way to shift your value metrics. Though pay attention to volatility more than ever in the next few years. That's the lesson for today. At least now I finally took the time to fully cover this topic. Hope you've learned some interesting stuff. Bye, guys.